Welcome to this video about an introduction to SLCN, part 3 of 4, class-based approaches. A graduated whole school approach. Universal. This includes all pupils, the whole school approach. Targeted. This is some pupils, some of the time, either in class or during small group intervention. And specialist. A few pupils with long-term SLCN. For example, speech and language therapy and PECs. What does universal look like? We understand what SLCN is and the impact it can have on learning and behaviour. We have tools to identify children who have speech, language and communication needs. We all use communication supportive strategies all of the time. And teaching supports all children's speech, language and communication. Some universal strategies. Create a communication supportive environment. Adapt your language. And explicitly teach vocabulary. Create a communication supportive environment. Reduce background noise. Reduce visual noise. Plan and use visual supports such as pictures, symbols, diagrams, and mind maps. Visually label classroom resources. Write down key information and instructions. Highlight, underline, and bold keywords. Use a visual timetable. Reduce classroom clutter. And encourage asking for help. We will now look at some of these in more detail. Minimize distractions. Children in highly decorated classrooms are more distracted, spend more time off task, and demonstrate smaller learning gains than when distractions were removed. The classroom environment can affect a child's academic progress over a year by as much as 25%. Why? We like the classroom to be interesting and exciting, but really we need the classroom to minimize distractions and for the lesson to be interesting and exciting. Consider desktop resources rather than on the wall. Many pupils with SLCN find transferring information from the wall to their book very difficult, so tabletop resources, which they can have by their side, are far more impactful. Adapt your language. Attract attention first, say their name. Give simple instructions. Use familiar vocabulary and check for understanding of any new words. Avoid inferential language. Speak in short and simple sentences. Slow down and pause often. Give extra thinking time. Repeat key words and summarize at the end. And show them. Write, draw, and demonstrate. Thinking time. Pupils need time to understand language and think about their answers. You could use think time, a 10-second rule. Talking with a partner. No hands up, questions to named individuals. And pre-warning of questions. You don't want any answer, you want a good answer. Oracy first. Research strongly supports a link between oral language skills and academic success. Supporting oral language skills in the first instance will support later literacy acquisition. Reading and writing float on a sea of talk. Oracy first. Some pupils in inner city classes contribute on average just 4 words per lesson. National Literacy Trust. A communication supportive environment will provide opportunities for oracy before writing. Provide opportunities for pupils to have conversations with both adults and peers each day. Support expressive language using visual prompts and modelling. And ensure pupils are seated in groups to allow pupils to work with peers who are modelling good levels of language and vocabulary. Teach basic group and partner skills. Pupils need to be shown and given supported opportunities to work with others to develop effective group skills. Facing the speaker, listening to others, asking when you don't understand something, and talking in turns and not interrupting. Consider allocating different roles to pupils. Ensure the task is specific and that feedback is expected. This is a student talk tactics resource. Scaffolding expressive language. Use sentence starters or stems. I like character because. Remodel incorrect sentences. And model to children how to extend their language. Supporting vocabulary and literacy. Vocabulary is the strongest predictor of reading success. Children with poor vocabulary do well with reading up to 8 years and then drop rapidly as they do not have the vocabulary. Phonics gets children off to a good start. It can give children the ability to decode and access the words on the page, but as children get older, language becomes the key driver. Some children do quite well with reading in the early part of their primary school years, but when they reach upper primary, they do not have the vocabulary. Their comprehension then does not progress. Vocabulary tiers. Tier 1. Anchor words. These are everyday familiar words, for example, clock, happy, school, etc. Tier 2. Words we need to know. These are high-frequency words used by mature language users with relevance across most subject areas. And Tier 3, words used for specific subject areas. Examples include photosynthesis, hypotenuse, and amphitheatre. Explicitly teaching vocabulary. This includes the following. Explicitly teach Tier 2 vocabulary. Visual prompts and supports. Concrete examples, for instance objects and videos. Create opportunities for children to practice new words. Talk about the meaning and link to other words that they know. Teach how it sounds, what sound it begins with, the number of syllables, and words it sounds like. Teach prefixes and suffixes. Teach comprehension strategies, and review it often. Using word maps in lessons. Here is one example. Using word maps in lessons. And here is another format. Word wizard. And here is another example. Online Simple Dictionary. A simple definition of words for pupils can be found online. Word wall. Add words to the word wall as you teach them with supporting visuals. Refer back to the wall each time you visit the word. Play games throughout the day. For example, ask one child to pick a word to define or describe and the class guess the word. This is one way to ensure you revisit words which have been taught. Word pot. Use a word pot to revisit taught words. Select a word, read the definition, and then ask the pupil to guess the word. Support with visuals on the word wall. Word banks and mats. Word banks and mats support a pupil's understanding of the lesson vocabulary, and in turn this can impact positively on writing. Mats go on tables at the beginning of a topic. Science words are always red, geography green, etc. Note the colours chosen do not matter, as long as they are used consistently. Then pupils know what to look for. Words can also be stuck on the front of topic books. Audiobooks for vocabulary development. Audiobooks help to expose pupils regularly to age-appropriate language-rich texts and develop their self-esteem as readers as they are reading the same book as their peers, and develops a love of reading. Schools can provide audiobooks in the book corner as well as on iPads. Use visuals. A picture is worth 1,000 words. This includes pictures, diagrams, demonstrations, hands-on activities, symbols, natural gesture, and videos. Visual frameworks, task plans, and graphic organizers. Provide visual structures to break down tasks into smaller steps. Support the pupil to start tasks independently, and provide templates to help plan and structure the written work. iPads to support learning. Display lesson slides, photos of demonstrations on the board or video, and photos of small steps to complete the task. Make sure that you allow for processing time. We will talk further about assistive technology later in this video. Mind mapping. Mind maps are a useful way for pupils to see how words and categories link together. Able to plan and organize their thoughts before writing. Brain dump without overthinking initially. Demonstrate knowledge without relying on spoken language. And the cognitive demand is high, the writing demand low. Visual timetables. Add photos of the teachers and staff in class that day, which can help to reduce anxiety. Visual timetables can also support pupils' understanding of vocabulary such as before, earlier, after, later, and next. It can be useful to decide which symbol software you would like staff to use so that it is consistent across the school. Visuals for repeated tasks and routines. Visuals in the classroom for routine, repeated tasks help to develop independence. For example, this can be helpful for the following types of routines. Arriving in class in the morning, getting ready for lunchtime, lining up for playtime, and getting ready for home time. Strategies matched to individual needs. Targeted strategies should be matched closely to individual child's needs and measured and progress reviewed. Considering targeted strategies. At the universal level, create a communication supportive environment, adapt your language, and explicitly teach vocabulary. At the targeted level, differentiate and scaffold work and activities, scaffold and support spoken language, and support friendships and social interaction. Using pictures and symbols to support the understanding of text. For some individual pupils with SLCN, symbols are a good way to support their understanding of text. Apart from the wider use of symbols for labels in the classroom and for visual timetables, this can be used by teachers when preparing differentiated worksheets. It is important though for staff to understand that they should not over-symbolize. Symbols should just be used for key words. Differentiating questions. WH words are often confused. Support WH questions in class with consistent visuals. Recognize that when can be particularly difficult. And use a narrative frame to support pupils to sequence their language. Using pictures and symbols to support the understanding of text. Asking questions can really help to develop a pupil's language skills, but we shouldn't ask too many questions and should ask questions the pupil understands. The hand 1 to 4 rule is useful. 1 question to 4 comments, repetitions, expansions, and explanations. For example, what have you painted? Ah, you've painted flowers. They are sunflowers. I really like the way you have added texture here to show the seeds. Simplifying questions. Blanks levels of questioning. Level 1. Naming. Level 2. Describing. Level 3. Retelling. Level 4. Justifying. Know what level the questioning the pupil is understanding and scaffold them to progress. Simplifying questions. This is an example of using blanks levels of questioning to differentiate a task. The first column is the level of the question, and the second is the example of a question relevant for that text. It can be useful to show teaching staff how to use these bookmarks when working with pupils to assess which level the pupil is at. Assistive technology in the classroom. Assistive technology, if available, can make a big difference to the learning experiences for some pupils with literacy difficulties linked to their SLCN. For example, laptops for word processing, word bank software, text reading software, text-to-speech software, mind mapping software, talking word processors, and reading pens. For these pupils using assistive technology as part of their normal way of working in lessons, it is important that they receive the necessary training to use this effectively. The pupil needs to have sufficient time to embed their new working practices and to become automatic in their use of the technology. Classroom top tips. Given what we've outlined so far, let's now take stock and look at some of the key teachers' top tips for pupils with SLCN. Remember, putting in place some of these strategies in the classroom is an important part of the ongoing, graduated approach to identification of needs. In some cases, pupils who have been presenting with barriers to learning may respond very well to these strategies. That is, they'll make good progress from their starting points, and further SLCN identification steps within the graduated approach may not be necessary or prioritised at this time. Top tips for preparing the classroom and lesson materials. 1. Label classroom equipment. Display and use a visual timetable. Carefully consider the seating plan, including the pupil's proximity to the board and opportunity for group work. Declutter, reduce visual distractions other than those needed for the lesson. Display key words and word banks supported by visuals. Use less information on the page, appropriate size of print and font. Provide key points in handouts or notes. And provide the use of visuals and/or manipulatives to support learning. Top tips for preparing the classroom and lesson materials. 2. Use colour coding in your materials, for example to show grammar. Add visuals to support written text. Photocopy teacher notes for the pupil to annotate or electronic alternatives rather than asking the pupil to copy. Use assistive technology where possible and if available, for example, laptops, spell checkers, speech-to-text, reading pens, audiobooks, etc. Provide sentence starters, frames and word banks for writing tasks. Present information and in different ways, include diagrams, key headings, visual cues, arrow and flow charts, mind maps, etc. and plan active tasks that build confidence. Classroom teaching tips 1. Simplify language and instructions. Use more visuals and demonstrations. Explicitly teach and pre-teach new vocabulary using a word map, and then repeatedly revisit. Chunk tasks into small steps. Give children extra time to express themselves. Repeat what they say back correctly, but still in a positive way. Accept any form of communication. Expand on what they say. Be kind but honest when you don't understand. Give them a choice between two options. And model the use of word banks. Classroom teaching tips 2. Help children to organise their thoughts for written tasks. Ensure plenty of time for pupils to rehearse orally before written tasks. Use writing frames, narrative frameworks, and visual structures. Give a sentence starter and/or a list of conjunctions. Allow the pupil to use pictures or symbols to help them express their understanding. Use directed discovery. Provide the pupil with the materials in order to find the answer themselves. Facilitate overlearning. This is repeated practice and revision above the normal level. And use or encourage the pupil's use of mind maps. These can help reinforce the connections that need to be made between key points. They can also support recording and sorting. Classroom teaching tips 3. Differentiate spoken and written work based on language abilities. Reduce the number of tasks and the amount of written information. Simplify questions, for example, using blanks levels. Give the pupil advance notice of being asked a question and check before asking pupils to read aloud. Allow 10 seconds thinking time. Use less text, more images and diagrams and symbols. And provide multiple options and scaffolding for children to demonstrate learning. Pen portraits, pupil passports, and one-page profiles. A pupil passport is a person-centered communication tool that captures all of the vital and specific information about an individual pupil. The pupil should contribute to its production. Most pupils with SLCN will not need a pupil passport. Effective high-quality teaching guidance and monitoring is usually sufficient. This is an additional personalised learning support that can be put in place for pupils with a more unique or complex profile of needs. It can be particularly helpful, for example, if the pupil experiences a severe speech and language and communication need, or if their profile of SEN includes difficulties across other categories of SEN. Pen portraits, pupil passports, and one-page profiles. These include strengths, what people like or admire about the young person, interests and things they enjoy, areas of need, strategies that support them, and relevant professionals and interventions. Homework. Homework can be a frustrating and upsetting experience for pupils with SLCN. If homework is not set online and/or is not accessible online to a pupil for any reason, it can be helpful for teachers to differentiate homework in line with differentiation of classwork when appropriate. Provide a sheet or printed sticker with the homework instructions on it. Provide visuals to support the task and word banks. Explain the homework, break it down and consider visuals. Do not explain while pupils are writing it down. Ask each pupil to check their work partner's book or diary to see if the homework is fully and correctly written in. If a TA is in the class, ask the TA to check or write it in or clarify for the pupil. And remind pupils that they must ask if they do not understand. Marking the work of pupils with SLCN. Avoid too much marking. It can be overwhelming for the pupil. Consider self-check marking criteria checklists for the pupil. For example, have I remembered full stops, or to use 3 adjectives, etc. Wherever possible, mark in lessons with the pupil. Feedback should be constructive. For example, what has the pupil done well? And what are the next steps that are realistic and achievable? Provide explicit feedback about the pupil's achievements. Mark for content rather than accuracy of grammar or spelling. And give the time to the pupil to read and note or respond to marking. Effective deployment of TAs. Teaching assistants are a very valuable human resource in every school. Therefore, effective deployment in lessons is critical to ensure they have a positive impact on the progress and well-being of pupils with SLCN. We know that TAs supplement and do not replace the role of the class teacher. Let's now quickly consider what effective TA support looks like for pupils with SLCN. Effective TAs support the teaching of pupils with SLCN. Scans and sharply monitors the room or the group first to assess whether support is required so that pupils with SLCN are not given unnecessary support time. Models and reminds pupils with SLCN to ask for help. Knows when to move following support. They do not stay with a pupil for any longer than necessary and may provide intermittent support and/or short, more intensive block support. Provides pupil with good thinking and response time, not downtime, so that they can think for themselves and can self-scaffold their learning as much as possible. Promotes independent learning, as well as extensions and challenges, and avoids a focus on task completion or spoon-feeding, over-prompting, or repeating verbatim what the teacher has said. Breaks down, simplifies instructions, provides visual support, and reinforces key vocabulary. And acts as a talk partner to rehearse with pupils how to ask questions, respond, and contribute. Effective TAs support the teaching of pupils with SLCN, provides clear feedback and evaluations to the teacher and pupil verbally and/or in writing, with a specific focus on progress and steps towards the learning objective. Supports peer assessment and self-assessment. Supports the teacher's marking, for example via routine literacy marking and annotations. Carries out pupil observations to support teacher assessment. And provides focused feedback to pupils which may include brief comments on how to improve and next steps. Effective TAs support pupils with SLCN who may be at risk of disengagement in lessons. Employs motivational strategies to keep pupils engaged and resilient, including praise, verbal encouragement, and making positive work marks, for example ticks, stickers, etc. Unobtrusively refocuses pupils if they experience attention difficulties to keep them learning, for example via short verbal reminders, non-verbal prompts, setting short time limit targets, and time checks. And talks to pupils in a discreet and unobtrusive way to seek their views and to remind them about expectations if they are presenting with some challenging behaviours, alongside appropriate use of humour, tactical ignoring, and other low-level techniques. Teacher-parent-carer meetings. Teacher-parent-carer meetings are scheduled in school one or more times during the year. Teachers also communicate with parents and carers of some pupils at other times during the year for a range of reasons. It's very important that we feel confident in talking with parents and carers of pupils with SLCN, particularly regarding the child's profile of abilities and the strategies they use to remove any barriers to learning for them. This is underpinned by all of the strategies and systems that we've explored in this video. This is the end of this video. Part 4 on this topic is now available to watch. You can view more videos on this channel in the About series.